Get started while we wait for the others to join in. It's sharp 5 p.m. my time. It's essentially the time of this talk, 13 UTC. Right, great. So thank you everyone for joining in. It's great to have a big audience here today with us. My name is Jaideep Singh. I'm currently a chemical engineering student at NTU in Singapore, and I'm currently based in the United Arab Emirates with my family. I'm here on vacation. And I'm also the youth representative at the board of directors at MUN Impact, a youth-driven organization dedicated to the service of the Sustainable Development Goals through advocacy and as well as promoting impact towards the goals. And I'm privileged today to moderate a UNOC side event along the lines of SDG 14 related to the elements of advocacy, stocktake, and innovation in the fields of oceans cleansing and oceans and protection of the oceans through plastic pollutions and other areas which we as humans can prevent. Today, I'm privileged to welcome a distinguished panel, all from youth as well as those from established backgrounds, working towards protecting the oceans through SDG 14, along the lines of the SDG 14. And we'll be discussing all three elements of the 14th SDG: innovation, stocktake, and advocacy. And without further ado, I'd like to welcome our panel one by one with each of our speakers. I'd request everyone to please mute themselves during the talk, and I'll be open to having questions. There will be a segment with questions from the audience as well. So I'd request the panelists to kind of just follow through with what the procedure is going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to introduce each of you one by one with your bios, and then we can have you speak for about 4 to 5 minutes or as much time as you'd like. Speak a bit about maybe in generic what you feel about the SDG 14 and your progress in the field. And then we'll move to more focused discussions on all three elements, including advocacy, stocktake, and innovation, and then tying them down together. And towards the end, we'll be taking questions from our audiences as well. So I'm looking forward to an exciting discussion. And let's start off with our first panelist, Mr. Carsten Hirsch, who joins us from Germany. He is the CEO and the co-founder of Plastic Fischer, an organization working towards the innovation in collection of plastics from rivers and water bodies in an attempt to tackle the microplastic problems in these bodies of water. Carsten's idea took shape in December 2018 when him and his friends traveled to Vietnam to celebrate his graduation from law school. Seeing a continuous stream of plastic, styrofoam, and other waste floating down the Mekong River in Vietnam and heading towards the ocean struck them with the idea of a water wheel that could collect the waste and lift it up to the shore. This was successfully tested back home in Cologne, and they soon decided to scale it up to implement the technology elsewhere across the globe. In April 2019, Plastic Fischer, the organization, was established with the intention of renewed innovations in waste removal from bodies of water through efficient mechanical innovations. Their swimming fence innovation, called the Trash Broom, has been recognized for its ability to collect floating plastic with effective automation and yet minimal resources. The organization has been recognized by the World Economic Forum for its innovations, which has now been made open source for other organizations and communities to take note of and develop. As of today, Plastic Fischer is working in India, in Indonesia, and has also a planned and grant financed project in Vietnam, which is just waiting to kick off. So with this great introduction and very impressive profile, let's welcome Carsten to come and talk to us a bit about his work and his thoughts on SDG 14. So Carsten, the floor is yours.
Wow, Jaideep, this was the best introduction I ever had. So thanks a lot. I don't know who wrote that for you, but it was very, very accurate. Yeah, so thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here today and talk a bit about what we're doing and participate and brainstorm with everyone and learn from each other what we could do, to prevent the oceans. You heard already a few things about what we're doing, so I try not to bore you with repeating myself. But yeah, it's true. I have a background in law, and then we saw that mess in Vietnam, and couldn't forget about that. So with the three friends, we decided to found a company to stop marine plastic pollution already in rivers, and we were the first ones, or one of the first ones, to do that. So what we did is we basically did it upside down of the usual way how you found a company. Usually you have a product idea, you really know like your business model, and then you test it, and if it works, then you found a company. But we really did it the other way around, and we first had the thought, let's do something about it, and let's find out in the place of operation what we can do. So we incorporated the company, went to Indonesia with the idea, and the sun came out when you made the introduction, Jaideep. I don't know if this is a sign, but it's getting too hot, so I'm getting in the shadow while I try to continue speaking. So we tested our water wheel in Indonesia, the second largest pollutant of marine litter, and figured out this is not working. So we had to become creative and came up with these fences made out of locally available material. And our idea was, let's do a very local approach. So let's build our technology in place of operation, let the projects being handled by the local community. So let's not send people from Germany to handle that. Let's really keep it easy. We use low tech, which is the opposite of high tech. So it really, I mean, I'm a lawyer, my friend is a graphic designer. So of course we could not come up with some fancy technology, but this is also something that I think is needed to scale up technology in emerging markets, to keep it simple and be able to work at low cost to scale these technologies. And scalability is really what we need in this field. We have 8 million tons of plastic entering the oceans every year, and we collected this year already 140 tons. When I take a look at my small company, I'm really proud of what we're doing and the hard work that our team is carrying out in India and Indonesia. But it is very important to do more, because it's just such a small fraction in comparison to the big mess that we're trying to help to fix. But it takes these communities or these organizations to tackle it and start something. And that was really what we wanted to do. Start with something, try to make it as big as possible. When the World Economic Forum shared some videos about us, and we got so many requests from all over the world, we decided to publish the construction manual open source, so everyone can take action as easy as possible. And yeah, it's all about collaboration to fix this problem. And collaboration is what happens way too little in this environment. And so I'm very happy to be here with so many people being interested in this topic, open for collaboration, open for knowledge exchange, to collaborate and complementary work together and help each other in places where the other one may be better than yourself. And we as Plastic Fisher, we focus really on working in India, right now in Varanasi, in Bangalore, in Trivandrum, and we're going to more cities this year. And yeah, I'm looking forward to learning about other initiatives, answering questions and sharing knowledge or thoughts. So thanks a lot for having me and making the first intro here. I'm looking forward to hearing from the others what they are doing. So yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Carsten. It's great to hear about your innovations, and we're excited to know more about your experience and your ideas on how innovation can be triggered in even our growing youth of today. Okay, so that's great to know. Let's move on now to our second panelist, Mr. Jeremy Raghavan. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your last name wrong, but Jeremy is a fellow of the Alliance of the Small Island States. He's also previously served as the Communications and Outreach Coordinator of the Seychelles Islands Foundation, where he ensured that the foundation's voice was heard and work was showcased at the national and international levels. Through social media, newsletters, press releases, and other media, he was able to share the meaningful work SIF has done and empowered others to understand and take care of their world better, including the oceans. In his role as a project officer at the SIF, he served as a facilitator for SIF's projects on the Aldabra and the Valle de Mai, where he played key roles in the Aldabra cleanup project and the 2018 Black Parrot census. And I must mention here that I think, if I'm not wrong, he and his team were able to collect 25 metric tons of plastic from the Aldabra river bodies. And that's a big amount of plastic to be collected. So that's great work from his end. He contributed to the SIF's official communication. He even ran education and outreach activities, and he has enforced biosecurity procedures as well. In line with this multidisciplinary background in policy and management, he was successful in advocating for the conservation and protection of World Heritage Sites in his homeland of the Seychelles, many of which have roots to water bodies and ocean-based resources. And he was also featured on the World Economic Forum's video sites. So it's great to have him here on the panel today. And Jeremy, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much for that introduction. And my apologies if there's any sounds in the background. I managed to find a bit of a space, but I'm hoping I can speak over any other sounds that might be maybe coming on. So yeah, just on my side, I don't know how many of you might be familiar with Seychelles, but I want to start from that perspective because we're this minuscule tiny dot in the ocean, but actually we have a massive ocean space, something about 1.4 million square kilometers. And you know, a population of 100,000. And so when you really think about that, South Africa is about the same size as our ocean space, and it has something like 60 million people. Oh, am I still here? Yes. And it's one of these things where the ocean is really our focus. We talk about blue economy. We talk about blue economy being something where it's fisheries, but also tourism. And in the future, there's going to be other things we're hoping to sustainably use that ocean for. And something like plastic. And when we're talking about SDG 14, we're thinking of more than just plastic. Plastic is one of the key problems that we can all see and identify. My work with SIF, thank you for going into that, is really based around these two sites that are quite, you know, when we talk about UNESCO World Heritage Sites, I hope some of you have at least visited one. I know India has some many. I know several different countries have some amazing sites. And just to give you an idea, Aldabra is one of 50 marine UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The other UNESCO sites that are marine, like the Galapagos, the Great Barrier Reef. So these are really incredible wonders of nature. And yet, you know, as far as they are from humanity, as far as they are from Seychelles' main islands, we have 115. Aldabra's one or a collection of some, if you ask some people. But it takes 3 hours by plane. It takes several days by boat. And so the marine plastic pollution that we was collecting on Aldabra, of which, and Dr. April Bird was a key researcher and a key co-leader in doing this project. So we may have collected 25 metric tons, but we found out in doing this 5-week expedition that there's something like at least 500 tons, up to 800 tons that are on Aldabra. And we estimate conservatively that it's something like 60 tons arriving each year. So this is a huge issue. So when we're talking about plastic pollution, it's important to remember also that there's different types. I mean, we're talking about single-use plastic, that could be bottles. We could be talking about flip-flops. These are more consumer-oriented items. But what we found actually by weight was 83% of what we think is on Aldabra is ghost gear. Ghost gear can be identified as fishing nets, ropes, buoys, and these things. So you could see that the ocean and the way it's being used is being clearly affected by plastic, by the activities that are unsustainable. So our work is really a drop in the ocean. It's you know, 25 metric tons is about the weight of a humpback whale. But when you compare that to 500 tons on just one island, let alone what's floating around, let alone what's on the other islands, it's quite a distressing figure. And I think that's what I want to bring out with the youth that are listening today is, despite these massive problems, I can't emphasize enough how important young people are in doing the actual work on the ground, going further than that, doing the advocacy, and even doing the policy making and the decision making. Your role now is so essential. And the younger you start at this, the clearer you have a stake in this, because you'll be living longer than I will. If you're young, I'm 28. I'm sure there's people younger than me and older than me on this call. And I think that the sooner you understand how your world is being impacted by things like plastic and other environmental issues, climate change, the more of a stake you have in this, because I can see beaches that should be pristine are not pristine, whether they're on Aldabra, whether it's a beach next to my house. So my critical message is, if you're listening to this webinar or any other events that are going on with United Nations Oceans Conference, there is a distressing amount of problems, but young people are really essential to making things move, and we shouldn't be used. And I want to put that in a very particular bracket. We should be listened to. We shouldn't be furniture in a room. We should be listened to, and we should be taken seriously when we give our views, because we are in very much, especially those coming from the global South, we're very much where the problems are happening, and many times, like in the case of Seychelles, with the plastic arriving from around the world, we're not responsible. So there's a lot that can be done. So I just want to start by giving that context, and hope there's plenty more time for questions and answers, and yeah, further discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's great to hear your perspective from the advocacy point of view. And we're excited to know more about what we can do as youth in the specific segments on the advocacy. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to having further discussions. Let's now introduce our next speaker, who is Mary Jane Lamoste. Sorry again if I'm pronouncing the last name wrong. And do correct me, please, if that's the case. So Mary Jane joins us from Southern Light in Philippines, and she began her career as a marine biologist in 2015 with LAMAVE, a non-profit organization dedicated to the conservation of marine megafauna in the Philippines. She mainly worked on Mobula rays fishery in the Bohol Sea, and also led a team of international researchers to study the population of sea turtles on the Apo Island in the Philippines, and built the National Turtle Catalog. While working in the conservation sector, she noticed the lack of economic opportunities for women in the coastal communities. These opportunities were particularly scarce for women despite the tourism industry booming in the country. And learning this reality, she innovated solutions that would provide these economic opportunities, as well as raised awareness about the marine environment and promoted sustainable consumption. She hence found the Tagpi, a Filipino word for patching things together, a circular economy initiative that promotes women entrepreneurship in coastal communities through personal initiative training. Since its pilot in February 2020, Tagpi has trained 38 women in coastal communities and upcycled more than 4,000 pieces of jeans and clothes. The enterprise has secured funding to provide economic opportunity for women during the pandemic, notably the Experiential Professional Development Fellowship and grants by the East-West Center and the Ocean Solutions Microgrants by the Sustainable Ocean Alliance, where Mary Jane comes from. Through the SOA microgrants, she was able to implement a project called Tagpi X O Ripples last year, where she collected trash from the ocean and stores in the coastal area. The disinfected plastic was about 200 kilograms and has been used as stuffing for upcycled toys. These toys will then be marketed as sensory toys for kids with special needs. It has now been, the Tagpi organization has now been recognized as a Sustainable Oceans Alliance Rising Star Ocean Entrepreneur, and as an EARTH Optimism finalist hosted by the Smithsonian Conservation Commons and the East-West Center, recognizing the efforts and achievements of the organization in Southeast Asia. We now welcome Mary Jane to come up and give her thoughts after this wonderful bio about her. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So I'm MJ. Thank you, Jaideep, for the introduction. So I'm calling from Portugal. So I'm currently attending the UN Ocean Conference. And prior to that, I was also attending the Youth and Innovation Forum, where there were about 150 youth delegates across the globe who were addressing the 5 tipping points. And one of the 5 tipping points includes like ending waste entering the ocean. So as I guess to give a brief introduction of who I am. So I've been working as in SDGs 14 since 2015. And then as I believe as an emerging leader, my feelings about what we're doing is constantly changing. That means changing for the better. What I mean is that, from the research side, we can move forward on other things. So as youth, we should not just focus on one problem, but expand on, what we think our skills can be more useful. To give you a brief background of what we've done in Tagpi, so we are, mostly, tackling the issues of plastic entering the ocean, at the same time ensuring there is sustainable businesses that are transforming women's livelihood in the coastal communities. At the same time, also ensuring that we are raising awareness about the issues of plastic existing. So as we know, the plastic is a global problem. Like during the UN Ocean Conference happening here, there has been a lot of discussion on how we can solve what is happening at the moment. And honestly, it's still frustrating. We are moving to the new era. They keep on saying the new era, but I think we are the problem is at the present. So we should not wait for the next generation to look after what we've done. So one of the main discussion that was included in the Youth Innovation Forum dialogues of the high-level officials is to really incorporate the innovation of youth across the globe. So that means basically ensuring that we have a voice in every decision that has been made. And this is happening in reality, that youth have a lot of ideas in solving problems. We do have a lot of, I guess, projects we are doing in our respective community addressing the plastic pollution, but then it doesn't reach the national levels because of how it's the bureaucracy is happening. But then we are the voices of the future. We have the skills, we have the connections, and that is one of the things that I do with Sustainable Ocean Alliance as well. We do connect youth with mentors to companies or to organizations that are mostly likely doing the same thing. So basically, you are not starting from zero. You're not starting from scratch, because there are already people who have done the things that you are doing. So the main thing, the main question now is that how we can leverage the resources, especially in the marine plastic pollution. How can we use the resources that are currently existing, and how we can, make this solutions more localized. Means more localized is adaptive to our respective communities. So as we know, different communities have different rules, different applications. So this kind of dialogues is addressing not just the resources available, but it's also showing the youths that there are a lot of opportunities out there. You have the support system, and basically the innovation, it keeps on, there is every day we have new idea, and our idea is valid. And basically what we need at the moment is more on like the collaboration part, and hopefully really we will be more involved in the policy making, because by the end of the day, the decisions happen in, like, it includes politics. So the bigger the problem, it involves the policy maker. So even if we have a really great project happening, which is really good, we really I really appreciate existing at this time of like the plastic revolution, the conservation revolution, but we need more policymakers. That has been one of the highlights of the UN conference, that we do have great ideas, but what's next? So it hopefully asks you the same question, like, what are you currently doing? What will be the next step? Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Jane, and it's great to hear your perspective from the advocacy and looking towards the future to the stock take. So great to hear about that. And now let's welcome our final panelist, who is Christine Ling, who joins us from our own organization, MUN Impact. Christine Ling is a rising senior at the St. Mark's School in Southborough, Massachusetts. She's the program coordinator of the 100K Deeds Challenge, a youth-driven initiative with over 150 student leaders that aims to raise awareness and encourage students to take action on the SDGs. She's a keen debater and a public speaker, and is deeply passionate about climate change, researching climate divestment in her school over the past year. Her work has been featured in various news outlets, including the South China Morning Post, the News, and Lead with Languages. And Christine will be talking about the impact component at MUN Impact with regards to SDG 14 and beyond. So Christine, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction, Jaideep. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to see so many faces out here today. Really glad to see that there's so many of you who are really passionate about climate change and coming together to solve this issue. And really impressive to hear what the other panels have done and their incredible impact as well. So I'm here on behalf of MUN Impact today. A little bit about MUN Impact is that it is a completely youth-led and driven organization that aims to motivate student leaders from all around the world to take meaningful action for the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that have been proposed by the United Nations. And today we've reached over 40,000 students from over 170 countries. And under MUN Impact, we have many different subsidiaries. I work specifically with the 100 KD Challenge that kind of acts as the action-oriented branch of the organization. And our main goal is to spread awareness and encourage youth to take action for the 17 SDGs. So what we aim to do is encourage students from all around the world to carry out individual deeds of their own. And these are any action, small or large, that contribute to furthering any of the SDGs. So they can be anything from using a reusable water bottle or metal straws to something larger, like organizing a workshop to educate your community on a certain topic. And a big part of our work here at MUN Impact is to bring the accessibility factor to students, because a lot of times, as a member of the youth, it can be really intimidating to take action, especially in the face of a big issue such as global warming and climate change, and specifically ocean sustainability. So it's, for me, really inspiring for me to be part of this organization where so many like-minded youth, such as myself, can come together and see our small individual actions come together and create big impact together. And as part of Media Global, we focus a lot on forming partnerships with other student-led organizations from around the world so that we can further bring our mission to different students from different sects of the world and different organizations. And yeah, I'm really excited to be here today to discuss further about how we can come together and involve youth in tackling climate change and ocean sustainability.
Thanks, Christine, and we are excited to hear your views as the youth representative on this panel with regards to the impact component on the issue at hand today. So thank you to all our panelists for their introductions and for their brief ideas of what we're going to talk about. And so let's now move on to the more focused group discussions on the guiding questions we've prepared on each segment. Just a couple of housekeeping points I'd like to bring up. So firstly, I'll be going over these guiding questions. We'll all talk with roundtable discussion one by one. And towards the end, we'll take up questions by the audience put up on the chat. So I welcome the audience to put up all their questions on the chat. And towards the end, I'll call upon you to ask that question yourself to our panelists. And in that way, we'll have more engagement with the audience as well. So let's start off with our group discussion with our first question on the innovation element. So with regards to innovations, when we talk about SDG 14 specifically, there's a lot of discussion on bringing innovation into the science and tech, into this entire conservation effort. But the point I'd like to bring up is that a lot of this innovation goes unnoticed, particularly because it's from countries which are less economically well off, or they don't get the attention they deserve. So what essentially can be done from a policy perspective and as a young person in the community to make sure that these innovations, if any, are recognized? And even if they are not recognized or they don't exist at all, what can be done to actually strike these innovations? So these are two questions which are worth discussing. And I'd like to start off with Carsten maybe on this, because he has the expertise on the innovation side. So Carsten, with your experience, what do you think can be done? And do you have any insights on this element?
Well, I think it's a very good question. I'm not sure if I'm able to answer the question, because we are thinking, we have an innovation, we have a proven concept of what we're doing, and we would like to spread the word. But how we do that, no one has to reinvent the wheel all the time. There are so many great innovations out there that no one knows about, and then people have to reinvent the wheel or just do that by accident. So I think there could be, for in our case, stopping plastic in rivers, there's like an action hub where people can upload their solutions, where there's shared knowledge about solutions in that specific area. But in generally speaking, I was thinking about, universities taking more a leading role more and empowering the youth for an entrepreneurship. Media has a responsibility to push proven concepts more. But I also see that there is a challenge. I don't really have I see the forum, the Uplink forum, for example, where we are part of, playing a good role there, leveraging the network of the World Economic Forum and publishing proven innovations with the large audience. This can help. We have published our construction manual. It's called open source, and we are really looking forward to getting inputs and how can we improve that. We try to share knowledge and are interested in learning more about this. So maybe there is a need to set up a hub to share that, or it even exists and we don't know about it. So challenging question. I'm very interested to hearing from the others, because I don't really feel I'm an expert in sharing innovation. I also feel that there is a demand to, bring out more proven innovations into the large audience.
Thank you, Carsten, for that perspective. So maybe for the policy element, we can go to Jeremy on this. So Jeremy, what do you think can be done from maybe a policy perspective?
Well, I'll just coming from where Carsten's come from. I have to actually commend him for making his designs open source. I think actually that's the first step. It's open source. Now, how accessible that is up to different communities and and countries in that sense. So I think if you've got an innovation and it's open source, that's the first step. But then it's about translating it to specific contexts. And I think that's when collaboration is key. And I've heard that word used by I think all of our panelists. And so I think it's one where partnering up and finding these local partners, national partners is key. But it's also translating. And I mean, yes, in the sense of translating innovation into specific, so it's all 6 UN languages is one basic way, but beyond that, but also contextualizing it so people in communities are using terminologies that they don't understand themselves, because I can say something, put into Google Translate, it's not what you understand by that. So this is clearly, something that local heroes, young people can champion, and if they have a good understanding of English or another language and they're able to be that glue. And it's really, communities are key. And I mean that at a local level, but also across the world. I'm also a Sustainable Ocean Alliance member. I was a part of the Youth Policy Advisory Council, YPAC. And in this, we really focused on, as 16 young people around the world, talking to each other about what was going on in our different regions. I mean, I'm from an African small island development state, so I understand that context quite well, but people from maybe a European context or from a Southeast Asian context, just understanding what problems we face and what solutions we dealt with or we provided, and what challenges and lessons learned along this. This provided a lot of interesting discussion, and it featured in some of our policy work. There's also another community associated with World Economic Forum, the Global Shapers, which I'm also a part of. And, there's about 500 hubs, 10,000 shapers. And I think like MUN, being part of these communities is key, because you're not only working with the people in your local context, but if you go and try and ask another person in another city what's going on there, and you may have heard something, you immediately have that easier access than I think a lot of people would. But we must not leave out the fact that information is not always accessible, and I mean that in the sense of paywalls. I mean in the sense of internet access. So the more you think about your solution being a lower data amount to download, maybe it's only accessible on WhatsApp as a basic level. And starting from there is sometimes. The power of WhatsApp and basic technology, I would say, sometimes is underestimated. I would have to admit a lot of my work is done over WhatsApp and then emails and then video links, because you just have that ability to overcome data issues. Solutions are hard. I'm just going to go back to the Seychelles context, and really what we did was in a very basic level do a beach cleanup. But that beach cleanup on Aldabra was many kilometers away from places, and it costs a vast amount of money. And I would say there's innovations that have taken place in other countries that need to be brought to certain countries. So even if it's maybe done somewhere else, just remember it's about adapting that, contextualizing that innovation. Don't forget how important that is. New ideas are important, testing them out and then sending them out elsewhere is also important. And I think being able to be true about when we succeed and also being true when we fail, so that when we fail, we don't have to let other people fail as well. They can already learn from our mistakes and see maybe that when I failed in one place, might not fail in another place. But being able to give people that foresight is key. policy is a tricky space for anybody to deal with. And the more we read, the more we understand what's taken place in the last 10, 20 years. I mean, from a particular plastics perspective, we're seeing this international instrument for ending plastic pollution for, it's going to be done by 2024. How much we all are part of that discussion is going to be key, and how much we basically help our countries take part in these discussions is going to be key. So I would say anybody in this space, especially from the global south, but anybody in this space needs to inform that discussion, because our lived experiences, as I said, our lessons learned, they need to be understood. And I would say we have to be very careful that this very promising deadline of 2024 doesn't leave out people, because it's good that we've got an ambitious target for an international treaty, but we must be careful that in the less than 2 years, or about 2 years that we have, nobody's really left behind, because a lot of work has been done by young people. A lot of work has been done by states that may not have the strongest representation at the international level. And just to give you an idea, there's so many different intersecting policies when it comes to the ocean. It's a very tricky space. I really advise a lot of reading. I can say myself, I've not begun to scratch the surface of this, and I've really spent some time on it. So I don't want anybody daunted by it, but when it comes to policy, it really is about going into the reading, going into the research as much as possible. And again, the more you talk to people, the more you realize where you can read, because sometimes talking to someone can be a lot more effective than reading a paper, I would have to admit. So those are some of my advices. I hope I've kind of helped with that space.
Those are some great perspectives. So thank you, Jeremy. Of course, the communication element with regards to both the innovation as well as shared understanding of what we can do is critical. And I think this is some really great points, even echoed and resonated at the UN Oceans Conference. So these are some great points. So thank you for that perspective. Maybe let's move on to Mary Jane now, what she thinks can be done on this particular issue from her insights.
Yeah, so I do have how to say, least background on policy, but I don't know how policy work, I guess, in respect in particular aspects. But my question would probably start, who defines innovation? Because each one of us define innovation in different ways. So for example, in Sustainable Ocean Alliance, innovation comes in entrepreneurship. It comes through communication. It can be like the YPAC as well. It's one of the biggest policy movement going on with the youth around the world. So in terms of discussing marine plastic pollution policy, it always depends on what is currently existing in respective region, because the solutions are localized, and I guess each local community or each country have different perspective on addressing the issue. So as a youth, the first thing that if there's such thing as you keep on reading, there's also such a thing as looking into existing organizations that are already doing all the work in your respective community, because you are not starting from scratch. There's like hundreds of organizations already doing a movement about plastic innovation, addressing not just the simplest form of doing coastal cleanup, but really upscaling, doing startups, partnering with, innovating with the government. So definitely, the only thing that, if you really want to address policy in plastic pollution, you should definitely look into, I think, aside from the government, I do know some, like universities are even integrating this in their curriculum. So definitely, you are not starting from scratch, and you have like the support system to make it happen.
Thank you, Mary Jane, for those perspectives. And then let's wrap up this particular segment with maybe Christine's insights. So Christine, as a youth already in the education system today, what do you think is the status of innovation-driven education, and how can that be changed if so?
I think that's a really fascinating topic and question. I mean, as youth, we definitely have to get creative in order to create big, impactful change within our educational systems, especially since we're standing up against big, powerful corporations or governments. But I think it's totally possible. And I think a lot of schools around the world are already doing this by having climate classes or having campaigns around their school that promotes positive change. And I think working at MEON Impact and 100K Deeds over the past year, we've seen this innovation in action. One of the big challenges we faced over the pandemic and remote learning was the technology gap. It's just something that's a really prominent issue. I think that everyone here has experienced it, where not everyone has the same technological access. And I think this can be a big barrier for a lot of people when they think of making change. But I think it's entirely possible to come up with innovative means to overcome these technology gaps, whether it's to work offline or work more individually within your community. And this is something that we're actively exploring. So for example, when we come across the issue of language differences, the 100KD team has actually translated our toolkit into dozens of different languages to be able to ensure that everyone from around the world has access to these information and these toolkits so that they can create impact within their own community. And within MEON Impact as well, because we recognize that it is not always possible for schools to implement specific courses or content related to climate change and sustainability. We're trying to democratize this experience and bring to students for free. So we've been able to offer this through various different mediums, whether it's through our Global Week of Actions that see different workshop speakers and keynote speakers come in and share their perspective and expertise on the topic, or whether it's through the 100KD Challenge, where students can actually take action and kind of come together to discuss the impact that they've created. We're also exploring many different other projects, for example, our podcast, which provides a platform for youth to be aware of the issues at hand and get more involved. So I think there's definitely going to be more steps on the way for all educational systems to achieve this kind of full integration of sustainable classes and content. However, I think by empowering youth through grassroots organization like MEON Impact, we're able to do that through smaller steps and hopefully in the bigger picture, inspire students and schools to create that change as well.
So with that, let's wrap up this segment with essentially 2 or 3 main takeaways. So first is, of course, that there must be change with regards to how the education system drives this innovation, but this is a bigger change. It will take a lot of time. A lot of the points raised were that innovations are already there. It's just that there's a communication barrier, and that has to be overcome either through accessibility, whether it's through language, by achieving language barriers and terminating those, or by actually even bringing together communication between communities, both at the local and the international level, and how grassroots organizations can support. So those are some great points, and thank you for that wonderful segment. And there have been a lot of questions coming in on this as well, and we'll take this up when we go into the Q&A segment. So now let's move on to the second element, which is advocacy. So 3 things today: innovation, advocacy, and stocktake. And we go to advocacy. And maybe let's start this with Jeremy, since he does come from a policy background. What is the importance of this policy in policy and advocacy in terms of communication from the youth level? And how does this exactly tie down with youth involvement? A lot of us here are not even 18, and it's rather difficult for us to think of that higher level. So from a very young youth perspective, what exactly can advocacy achieve? And if there is something that there's substance to this, are there any specific examples in your knowledge that have managed to make some little change, at least, even to achieve the success of this advocacy-based initiative at the youth level?
Thank you for that. I'll try and answer those questions and provide some examples. It's a tricky process because I think I would say my journey with the environment started when I was 19 and going to a place like Aldabra, which is ridiculous, but I've also had my parents, one was a farmer, one was an artist. So hiking, snorkeling, fishing, being outside in nature has always been a thing in my life, and I'm very grateful for it. And it's not everybody has access to it, but I always ask myself and others, what would be if how you brought up is different. So I don't know, anybody underneath the age of 18 is obviously in a position where their parents are still very much in charge of what they do. And I think your parents' support is always key, but maybe your parents are not on board. Maybe they're not aware of these things. So that's a barrier sometimes. Or if they're your supporters and champions, then that's going to accelerate things. But there's also schools and other support mechanisms around you to realize. And then MUN is obviously part of this discussion. So I mean, when we're thinking about is identifying what you care about. Is it the beach next to your house? Is it the mountains? Is it your whole country? Knowing what that is, and at that age, I mean, anything is possible. I think I've seen people from the ages of 14, if I'm not mistaken, such as Greta Thunberg, taking positions and basically championing her cause, which is climate change, and doing something as radical as a climate strike. I'm not advocating for that necessarily. I think it's what she wanted to do, and I think it's done a lot to raise awareness. I think it's done a lot to put pressure on. That's a great example. I know Vanessa Natake is another climate activist, and there's many more I can point out. And I think the truth is governments, multinationals are very powerful. You as one person, you're not as powerful, but you as 10 people, you as 100 people, you're as 1,000, you are becoming a block of potential voters. When you turn 18, you're already consumers, your families are consumers. If you're giving up meat, if you're giving up single-use plastics, which I must mention is 50% of all plastic is single use. So there's things you can do as consumers already, that once you know what you care about and see how it's been affected by that problem, you become an unstoppable force at your household level, at your local level. And if you keep on going with the support of others at a national and international level, I'm not going to sugarcoat it and say that there aren't huge challenges in front of us at a political level, because the world we live in is not exactly fair. It's not exactly straightforward. But it's not to be depressed by that. It's rather to get very serious about that, because if we as young people know how bad our world is and how we're going to live through it, maybe it's a decision at an early age that I want to study politics. I want to study something that I will become a decision maker. And I don't think things will be happening fast enough, I mean, for these things to happen. But if you're rising in your government and if you're rising in corporations to become the critical decision makers, I think that's going to be super important. I think also advocacy is one where you need to do something. I've been lucky enough to be part of a team of the Seychelles Islands Foundation, where I had a great mentor. I had a very supportive environment. So from the ages of 22 to 27, I was in this very formative organization where I had the support to do things. And the Aldabra Cleanup Project is a great example of something where people from around the world, we got together and did something. And we all were able to become strong advocates about plastic pollution, because once you say you've been part of a project that has removed 25 metric tons, people listen. People say, well, this person has had to deal with that. So I advise people to do. And then also from what they've done, you've got so much insights that maybe others might not have. And I think that, when we're talking about SDG 14, there's so many other things more than that, than plastic. So we're talking about marine protected areas. So identifying these, understanding if you're a scientist, I encourage, Asha, if I can recommend someone to actually follow and find out more, there's a marine biologist by the name of Asha Davos. And she has an amazing quote she brings up, actually, and especially when you think about women scientists as well. In science, women are very underrepresented. I think the global average is something like 25% of scientists are female. In marine biology, it's a little bit more. I think it's about 35%, but it's still underrepresented. But when you think about women and men from the global south, and the global south is developing countries, that's 70% of the world's coastlines. And yet there's a very, very small amount of marine biology. So I encourage anybody under the age of 18, if you love the ocean especially, and are thinking about SDG 14, pursue a career in marine biology, or other things. It could be in tourism, and you could be a skipper, but entering that space is so important. And if you're at this age thinking about a career, please think about that. And I really encourage you also finding mentors. They could be your parents, they could be parents, friends, university academics, your teachers. Connecting with the right people is so key. So I hope I've answered some of what you said, Jadip. I don't want to take up too much, and I hope I've given some examples. But I'm happy to share some links in the chat as well. There are many great things, but we have to accept also that there's a huge crisis and not much time. So thank you.
No, I completely agree. And those are some excellent points, Jeremy. Thank you. It's very important to be able to find that niche of people that you can work with to achieve this, because as an individual, it's limited to what you can do. And like you rightly said, it's about finding like-minded people, maybe a mentor to be able to lead that further. So thank you for those perspectives. And I'm sure some of our youth here as the audience will benefit greatly from that insight. Maybe let's move on to Mary Jane now on what she thinks about this. So Mary Jane, maybe you could share your insights on the youth element on advocacy.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So let me give you an example as well. So in 2018, I was part of a CCAP. So it's CCAMP, gathering all youth across the Philippines to address, I guess, marine conservation issues. So the CCAMP is called Save Philippine Seas, and basically what we were doing there is we were there for a 10 days discussion, interactive sessions, interactive activities to really show if you want to create change, it doesn't mean you are a marine biologist. It doesn't mean you need to be like a lawyer. You can gather these people together and create a solution together. So one of the activities that we did is basically writing letters to leaders. So this is sound intimidating for most of us as a young leader, I guess. Imagine writing a letter to a politician. So what it entails is basically, if you want to address an issue and you know that this will only be addressed by people who are in a higher position, the only way you can do it is either write them a letter or do like a rally or a campaign in social media or in the park. So there is different ways of doing things, and the main question is, how do you want to go about it? So for example as well, when I started Tagbi, so it's a social enterprise. I didn't have the background of doing so because I was in marine biology sector. So what I did basically is to figure out what is my problem, what is my vision, and by identifying that, I want to empower women in the coastal communities by showing to them that there are amazing things in the ocean. And then it relates to what I'm doing because I'm a marine bio, I can relate. And the next step is showing them that, there are ways that they can take advantage of these resources. So we introduced the concept of sustainable business. So by doing the sustainable business side, you aim to really inspire them that they can take advantage of, especially the tourism industry happening. So you are already pointing out two different aspects. One is the biodiversity. Two is the business, the opportunity. And then the third one is, you want to create you want to add more concept in a business. So you go look into another existing resources, which is plastic. So plastic is a global problem. Let's be honest with that. I think it will never end until the bigger companies decide to make a change. So what you can do is, create, solutions that are localized. So we did collect all the plastic available in the area so that, reaching out to stores if they have plastics that they can donate to the communities we are working with. So you are already hitting two birds with that, the businesses and the plastic itself. And then once you have those four things already, it's already addressing the need of innovation and advocacy. So advocacy for me really depends on how you see it. Just like writing letters to leaders, it's intimidating. Intimidating means to me is that it's intimidating to do something that we don't know. But we can only, I guess, overcome intimidation if we want to take risk. So by taking risk, we will only find out if it works, right? Like, how can you say like a policy? I guess if a policy will work out if the people on the ground are not applying it. So you can only, I guess, push pressure on the policymakers if on the ground level there is we have evidence to show. But even if let's be honest as well that it's even if we have evidence, there's also pressure in the policymakers to really implement it harder. Like they have other things to do as well. So I guess as young innovators, we need to be patient as well. Everyone is doing something, and we cannot just say that our solution is the best. There are others who they are also doing their own solution, and our solution may be the best in our community, but in other areas as well, we need to consider that it might not be possible. So we need to be mindful on how we, I guess, advocate our respective advocacy, because you might not be, I guess, you don't want to be on the wrong side of I guess stakeholders or like businesses. So yeah, just be mindful on raising your voices towards advocacy.
Great. Thank you, Mary Jane, for those perspectives. Now maybe let's move on to Carsten and what he thinks on this issue.
Yeah, there were a really interesting point by Mary Jane also at the end. Yeah, be mindful about that your solution is maybe not always the best one to apply, and then in your specific field that you're working on, maybe other players that you then should recommend and say, hey, maybe we're not the guys to, Plastic Fisher might not be the guys to clean up the ocean or to clean up the lake, but we know people that can do that. And then, push these people into that, know where you're good at and know where you're not good at. Plastic Fisher is not good at policy making and awareness raising, and we're also not recyclers. We are aware of that. We're not solving the problem because we're just collecting what's already out in the ocean. So we are at least aware of that we're fighting symptoms here. But we said, okay, where do we start? There is a huge problem. We founded our company out of emotion. And as a small startup, what can you do? And we decided, okay, we can stop plastic in rivers now. But we cannot change the legislation of the country of India in redesigning packaging or making schools teaching sustainability from the start. And we look for partners that can do that have more power to challenge the design of packaging, to raise awareness in young communities and be open to acknowledge you don't have to do everything yourself. It's impossible. Plastic Fisher cannot do everything himself, or we cannot do everything ourselves when it comes to this awareness and policy making and collection and recycling. We do just a little part. We only do the collection and the sorting, and we cannot do it all over the world. So we need other competitors in this area to do that. And there is a lack of collaboration. Unfortunately, there's always this competition, and that needs to be overcome. We need to find more like-minded people that are aware of saying, okay, I cannot do this as Plastic Fisher. We cannot save the world, and the ocean cleanup can never also scoop all the plastic out of the ocean. But that's okay. We need to acknowledge that there are different parties doing something, and we need to work together and push each other instead of putting others down. And this is happening way too much in the field that I'm working in. And what I heard before from Jeremy was also very accurate, and JD, you also repeated that. Then find like-minded people, a good team, and with this team you can achieve a lot. And I was super lucky to find the right people in my team to work together with me on this idea of let's efficiently do something about this huge problem. And I'm lucky, or I'm privileged to live in Germany, where we have existing waste management, and I can talk here to people to try to raise funds for our operations. But our project managers are working in this environment that I lived in Indonesia also for nearly a year, but they live there every day and carry out this work. And to find these people with this dedication to move things forward is necessary to also bring your vision into actual action. And it's necessary, but if you find these people, you can really move things, and you don't have to be a genius, and you don't have to be an environmentalist since birth. Yeah, I mean, everyone who's here is already aware of the destruction of the planet, or is interested in what can we do. I was not going to a lot of protests when I was 18. Yeah, and I studied law. I'm a lawyer with background. And then I saw that, and I decided, hey, with my two friends, let's do something about it. And we did something. And I'm really proud what we did until here. And it proves me you don't have to be for 20 years in the sustainability environment. You don't have to be a genius, because I'm not. And you can still move things around if you find the right people to help you and push you to move forward. And also, and I'm happy that this was also said by Jeremy, it might not be that easy, because you feel a lot of resistance. You have to, I mean, we work in India and Indonesia, and the to work there with the government, it's really a struggle. And I have young people that work with me. I don't know until which point we're considered to be young. I'm 30 now. Most of our people are younger. Also of our project managers, they are also not geniuses, or they are not. They are not geniuses, but they are super dedicated. They're good people, and they manage to carry out these great projects on the ground. So everyone can do something, but it's also tough. Yeah, maybe people laugh about you if you reject the plastic bag, or if you say I'm vegetarian. Yeah, or if you say, man, don't throw your waste on the ground, because that might be normal where you live. Yeah, or where you grew up, and maybe even your parents don't support you. I mean, my parents thought it's a hobby what I'm doing now. Yeah, and it's still hard to explain that, man, it's a full-time job. We're running a company here. It's not like I'm hanging around with friends all day and then we also do some plastic. It's really a job. And they slowly understand, but it took them so long. And I I graduated from law school, but then I went to Indonesia and gave up everything before I quit my job at the law firm. And no one in my family was really happy about that, but it was the right thing. And you can always, if it feels right to do something at this time, then do it. You don't have to commit to. I studied law for 7 years, and I still dropped out of that career and decided to do plastic fisher, and it was the best decision. And it also opens me career paths in the future, because I founded a company and we at least had some success until here. And yeah, I think my biggest learning also is the words or the phrase of sunk costs. So not just because you invested so much time in doing this and that, or this money, you have to commit to do it. If you now understand, okay, I want to do something for the ocean, and do something, there are organizations, you can write emails, right? Hey, how can I participate? You don't need to found Plastic Fisher yourself. Maybe we have a internship for you, or we can start a project at your place, or maybe the other panelists can do. There are so many companies that already found a basis to do something where you can maybe be part of and start it in your own city. And you don't always have to found a company and learn everything yourself, but you can do it, and it's challenging and interesting. So yeah, just do it, to quote Nike. I'm not sure if this is appropriate here, but I think that's about the spirit.
Yes, but those are some great points. Thank you, Carsten. Especially, I think you bring up a broader point of having these, being in touch with these sustainable corporations, if you call it. As youth, getting involved with these people, doing smaller projects, doing your part, and being with a like-minded organization or entity, in being able to make play your part in achieving these goals. And I think that's a crucial point brought up. So yeah, I'd encourage my panel, my audience, to actually go ahead and maybe connect with these organizations, whether it's the SOA or it's Plastic Fisher, maybe things you can do, learn from them and implement them in your smaller communities at a smaller scale, but at least it's a start. That's very interesting. All right, so let's move on, and let's very quickly go to Christine and hear her opinions on this before we move on to stock take very quickly. So Christine, yes.
Well, advocacy is a huge topic, and as a youth member, it can feel really intimidating, because when the first thing that we think about advocacy as a youth is protests. And as Jeremy pointed out earlier, I think a lot of protests such as Fridays for Future are great. And some of them have evolved into huge international movements that have created big impact to date. And while they can be really effective and really impactful, it's really important that you do have collective voices with you and an audience for this that can create change. But I think for me overall, like a big barrier to youth advocacy is that many people think that you need the government or other similar large-scale organizations to implement changes in support of the topic that you're advocating for. But in our day and age, this is not true anymore. It's really important to realize that our small actions do matter. And with powerful platforms like social media, we can come together to record these and to show that we are creating positive change. And I think a beautiful and unique part of being a member of this youth generation, as Carson touched on earlier, is that many of us are passionate about the same issues of sustainability and creating this more sustainable future. And we're all really excited to collaborate on formulating solutions. But it's just really important to form these dialogues and discussion spaces for us to have communication on these topics so that we can collectively advocate for the things that we're passionate about. And of course, every topic is situational and will require different methods of advocacy. But in general, I feel that advocating for an issue that you're really passionate about will inspire others around you to also advocate with you. And when you put all this together, I think that we can really inspire major change through collective advocacy. And one way that we do this at MUN Impact is by creating networks through our partnerships with different student organizations and even school clubs. And this is a really powerful medium to just, even if it's just like MUN conference through OMUN, to discuss topics that are under the SDGs, whether it's poverty or educational access or more specifically today, ocean sustainability, marine sustainability. These are all topics that we can talk about, discuss, see if there is any action that can be made, any possible solutions. And in fact, victories can be made. Recently at MUN Impact, one of our student leaders led a whole team of students to formulate a resolution. And this is actually the first time where language from a MUN conference and resolution was transformed into language that was used in a real UN resolution passed by the General Assembly. So I think that when we put all of these small victories together, there is a lot of change to be made. And it is really appreciated. It's a really, I think, redeeming feeling to know that your action does matter and it is contributing to the greater good.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christine. And thank you to all our panelists for this segment. I think we have some very crucial takeaways here. So of course, one thing is about finding that like-minded ecosystem. In fact, I think one of our audiences here, if I'm not wrong, it's Arfan maybe. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong, maybe just drop it in the chat. He brought up this idea of ecosystems as well. So I think it's very, very well understood that this is important to find that ecosystem, whether it's remotely or in your own community, and finding a mentor to support that. And there are several examples of how that has been successful. And then further moving on, looking at even student communities associating with these organizations that can actually make sure that this is on board and one can make an impact at this level as well through advocacy. So thank you for this very, very enriching segment. And I think just to be mindful of even the questions to take up from the audiences, I think we'll just move on and kind of talk about stock take together with the questions. So I think we'll just move on to the Q&A segment for now and then talk about stock take as we go along, just to engage our audiences as well. So we are now in the Q&A segment, and I think let's start off with a question by Clara Hong. So what I like to do is I like to call the name and then the student can ask the question directly. So that way there's a better engagement with the panelists. So Clara, do you want to unmute yourself and maybe ask your question?
Okay, thank you. You mean the first questions?
You can pick any one.
Okay, the first one is about, is it possible to collect extra tax on plastic product? And because like we can use that money to research other cheaper alternative for plastic, because I think banning the use of plastic or single-use plastic is very hard for us to achieve because just human behavior is hard to change. And also if we ban the use of plastic, there will be a lot of job lose. So I don't think it's the best way for us to find a final solution. So I think the best way for us to solve this problem is to find a cheaper alternative that can help us to replace plastic. So Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Clara, for your question.
Thank you.
So I think just to summarize, it's basically what's the odds of having a better ecosystem for research on plastics, and the alternatives should be tax the current use of plastics. And I think I'll open it up to the panel who thinks they can start off with this, whether Jeremy, Mary Jane, or Carsten, or maybe even Christine.
Well, I just give it a try. So I think finding a solution, yeah, for single-use plastic that is cheaper than plastic is hard, especially at the moment. I'm very happy to see there are a lot of companies working on it. I think banning single-use plastic in some cases is powerful. We see that in different countries that this happens. Plastic bags can be replaced, or you put, you know, the legislation in place that that in Germany we have to pay if we. First, we had to pay when we wanted a plastic bag that was usually for free, and then it was replaced by paper bags. Then the question is a paper bag ecologically better if you only use it once than a plastic bag? There are a couple of questions that I'm not able to answer, but I think taxing plastic is really powerful. I already read in the chat, like, what about deposit systems to make sure it's getting back into the supply chain, or somehow putting a tax on it so that it gets back? I think in Germany, we have a deposit system that works very well for aluminum cans, for glass bottles, and for PET bottles. And this increases the recycling rate drastically. That was my first thought when I came to Indonesia. Let's put a deposit system here. It's very challenging to implement it, actually, but I think things like this, putting taxes, extra taxes on single-use plastic would be a good thing. Now we need to leverage the EPR, the extended producer responsibility, that if companies emit plastic to the market, they are also responsible for collecting and managing it properly. And this needs to be, in my opinion, implemented at a global scale and also executed after implementing these policies, which is a big challenge, but this would help, you know, having less mismanaged waste around the world. I'm sure if I drifted a bit in answering the question, but.
Thank you, Costa. Jeremy?
Yeah, if I could add on and very much agree. I think the beauty of today is we have examples from around the world. Kenya, Seychelles, other countries have banned plastic to some level of success, but people have found ways around that. And I really like what Clara said in terms of human behavior is hard to change. I couldn't agree more. It's extremely hard to change. And you have to understand, what are we trying to change? Are we trying to change the consumption of plastic, or are we trying to change littering? Because still in Seychelles, despite the fact that we banned plastics, people were still littering, and they were littering with reusable plastics. So it's really unfortunate when you're trying to target a certain behavior. So I think it's really important to, and I don't think I can answer this question right now, but the extended producer responsibility is a concept where basically sees that the corporation who's creating this product is really or even the corporation business importing this product, this plastic product, understand what we call in economics its negative externalities, right? You're putting a tax on this, and you're understanding how much is that product going to negatively affect other people, the environment. And so what you're suggesting is maybe putting that money towards research. And I think more money for research is absolutely needed, but just even dealing with the impact. And I think what I found when I was in Germany for a while, and what I know is in the case in Singapore, is the lack of landfills. And this is a very deliberate, important thinking, and it's not possible for every country. But once you realize the amount of space that plastic waste takes up, and generally what waste takes up, once you start putting that into the prices of any product, this becomes, people start realizing, wait a minute, these things are not necessarily what we should be doing. The problem is you can sometimes price certain people, certain group out of certain products, and you don't want to do that. But when you think about luxury items, when you think about items that not everyday people are using, if I can put it in such terms, it's important that the prices reflect. So I would agree that it's important, and it does exist. I would highly recommend checking out examples in Singapore. I think Rwanda is also another country that banned, and you can see across the world, I think by doing that research, and there's been a lot of research done comparing successes, that it depends on the context. Certain places, certain things work, other places not so much. For global context, we need to look at the major producers of plastic pollution. And I think we need to ensure that extended producer responsibility the idea of polluter pays is a key principle to also think about. But if you're targeting the biggest producers of plastic, who also happen to be fossil fuel affiliated, you will find some interesting things. And I think that's at the global level what needs to be done. But yeah, at the local level, it's one where we have to understand what behavior we're changing exactly.
Some great insights. Yeah, Christine.
I wanted to add really quickly that this might be a bit of a tangent, but recently scientists found out that people are having microplastics circulate their bloodstream as a result of plastic being dumped into oceans. And there actually surprisingly isn't a lot of research on microplastics as a whole. And as part of this newer generation that is having this microplastic invasion in our bodies, I think it's really important that we take action now to stop this from happening, whether it's taking action within your own community of banning plastics from your household or spreading like information and brochures about this to your friends and stuff. But I think it's just really important that we tackle this issue because it's becoming a health hazard.
I just want to quickly add something I just discovered before pandemic. So I was in Myanmar. I don't know if anyone from Myanmar here. So I was in Enli Lake with other impact investors from Southeast Asia. So we were, I guess, observing what is happening with the, in investing, like how do businesses invest in the Enli Lake area. So what we've noticed is that plastic is not well introduced, like plastic packaging are not yet, or maybe not obviously seen in Enli Lake, Myanmar. And that we did interview, like, why do we see a lot of woven baskets in the river, like really good quality woven baskets in the river? And then we did find out that it's deeply rooted in their in their culture, that they want to, they still want to create I guess baskets. In the market you have like I don't know if they call it bayong in the Philippines, like bags made of nipa tree. So it's still we were not expecting to see it, like for my, I guess, 27 young years of living in the planet, I was not expecting to still have that kind of village or a community that are still deeply rooted to their culture of, like, taking advantage of what nature can offer. So I think one question that we ask ourselves, like, will plastic sachet be prevented in reaching Enli Lake, Myanmar? And then until today, we don't know the answer. Maybe during the pandemic, it has changed a lot, like, because we need a plastic. So just imagine a community still doing what we've done, maybe, I guess, 30 years ago, of, taking advantage of the resources. And hopefully, if the government, I guess, not just the government, or like, the Department of like Trade and Industry promotes, having those more cheaply produced, locally sourced, I guess it's not plastic bag, but it's just it will be amazing to see that again, like it's still existing. Why not, bring it back? Is it because it requires more time? It's but it's just amazing to see. And let's just remain hopeful that the government or the policymaker or each one of us realize that we always have a choice, and by the end of the day we decide. It's really easy to just buy something and get a plastic. So by the end of the day, it's always what is your what is your belief? How do you care? How do you want to show? You just don't want to do something because you want to show it to everyone. You need to do it for yourself, and basically, to influence other people around you as well.
Right, great. Thank you, Mary Jane. And this has been a very fruitful discussion. So thank you, Clara, for your question. And I hope you did get some insights from what you asked our panelists. All right, so let's move on to maybe one or two more questions, because that's what we have the time for. So there's a question by Philippa. Philippa, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I am. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So basically, my question was about kind of how to make a career in such a field work in terms of financial, like kind of, because a lot of the work in ocean conservation involves either volunteering or unpaid work. It is getting more and more difficult to convince younger people to pursue such a career when you might not even end up getting paid as much as you want. It's not viable or like support a life that you want. So what do you have any does anybody have any advice on that? Like, thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. Okay. I get, the future is, someone told me, if you really want to create an impact and provide yourself as well, be a social entrepreneur. So in that way, you are uplifting communities, you are still the values of your product, or the values of your product aligns of what you wanted and what is the best for the greater good for everyone else. So it's already, you're hitting 3 or 4 birds in one social enterprise. So definitely I would suggest you to go along in that path.
I really like what Mary Jane said, because if you have to work for free, that's not sustainable in the end. You cannot work, even though if you work for a good cause, it doesn't have to be for free. Why is it not okay to earn money if you're doing a very good job? And finding a business model in saving the planet is the best thing that you can do to provide a service that is needed, that is wanted, and get paid for it, or a product, of course. And in my opinion, yeah, of course, that you can do an internship that is unpaid, or you can volunteer that is unpaid, but you cannot work full time for a long time without earning any money. So it is hard, and I also sacrificed money. I earned more in the law firm I worked for. Money is not my main priority, and I think most of our people in the company, it's not the case. But we also have to pay our rent and our food, and want to go on vacation, and maybe have a family that we have to afford. So we need to find ways to create impact and earn money with it. And there's nothing wrong about it. And I think the perception of, people asking you, hey, why are you paying yourself a salary, or why are you working for a for-profit company in that environmental area? It's a bit old-fashioned, and it's okay to earn money. I think social enterprise, or social entrepreneurship is the future to create impact and scale impact. Or at least I support this view. There are of course also NGOs that work and that are creating a lot of impact and also pay salaries. But don't work for years or months for free, because I don't think it's good for you, and it's also not a sustainable way of doing impact. If you expect people to really work hard and don't pay them anything. But it's also not easy to find something in between. That's also the truth.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the work you're doing. It's really inspiring.
Thanks. Jeremy, I think you had something to say.
Yeah, just quickly. I mean, definitely echoing both Mary Jane and Carsten. I would add is, in the beginning I said, make sure you don't get used. I think it's important to understand you all have value, a tremendous value as a young person, because you're bringing, again, this future perspective, this current perspective, energy and optimism. Older people rely on us for optimism, guys. That's a lot of what we provide in some people's views, but it goes far beyond that. So my lesson, my question, my thing is, make sure not to be used. And I think if you're someone who's able to be passionate, able to have a good idea, you don't have to go to the first person who's offering you an internship or a job that's low paid or whatever. You can take your time sometimes. Some people are in a different position, but be very strategic, be very intentional. I can't speak for every case, but I know with my case, it's a case of sometimes finding something else that was not monetary, but know enough to, it was a mentor or it was a particular kind of project that gave me experience. So then the following thing was a more had better conditions. So being very strategic of what you want to do is hard. And I don't know for every context, but for instance, I know because people are demanding this, and I think that's the thing, when you're offered something with no pay, don't just accept it, do push back. You might not be the first person who's pushed back on their offer. Other people, but over time, that person is going to realize that they're not going to get the best talent. They're not going to get the best people working for them. The UN, I know there was an incredible case where somebody who was an intern was not getting paid. He was camping outside of the UN. And then I know there's been a lot of push to try and ensure that there's a livable wage and there's more things than just, a livable wage actually. So my challenge to you is make sure you don't get used, be willing to take a step back and sometimes go for something and wait for something that might come along. But it really depends on your context. And I know there's a lot more money needed, but as time goes in, everybody realizes there needs to be more money into this game because we need to attract the right people. And it is my hope, especially for those in the global south, that the money actually reaches us, but it's only going to be for demanding and showing what we are worth and how we're being impacted. So don't ever stop doing that.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for that insight towards the end. And with this, I'm sorry, we can't take any more questions because we just have about 4 minutes left. But I thank all the audiences for their participation. I've seen a lot more than just questions on the chat. There's been a lot of summarization, a lot of discussion, and there was some great discussion on the chat. So thank you so much to the panelists and to the audience. And it's great to have you all here today. And feel free to connect with our panelists offline. I think, would Carsten, Jeremy, Mary Jane mind to share their emails on the chat if that's okay? And maybe then you can connect with them further. So thank you, everyone. Just before you all go, just want to share with you about our organization, MUN Impact, maybe a lot more about what we do at the organization and how you can get involved. So for that, I'd like to call upon Ayomide and Christine to maybe share a bit on how youth can get involved, just very quickly.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Ayomide Ajikaye. I currently am based in the US, and I am one of the Secretary Generals of MUN Impact's global leadership team. And so what we do is that we form partnerships and connections with organizations and schools around the world, and we have regions and we have multiple different regions spanning from North America to Southeast Asia. And so how you could get involved in that way is by becoming a diplomat. Once you become a diplomat, you're able to join your region and start reaching out to these organizations, start reaching out to these schools, and actually create workshops. One workshop that we actually did, I was part of the North America region for a while, but one workshop we actually did was with an organization called Ocean Preservation Society. We were actually able to watch a documentary about the oceans, and it was from an Oscar-winning documentary. So things like that, it's the connections that you're able to make that also allow us to continue advocating for issues like ocean sustainability. So that's a way that you all can be involved. And I can, if you want, I'll put my email in the chat so that if anyone is interested in joining, I can then send further information about what it means to be a diplomat. But thank you.
Thanks, Ayomide. Maybe Christine, you can add in now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, there are so many other programs under MUN Impact that you can get involved with, from online debates to MUN conferences and to 100K Deeds, which is the more action-oriented branch. And in the chat right now, I'm going to paste our website link. And if you check it out, you'll find more information about our different programs, the application links for them, and how you can get involved. And also really exciting, a small plug here is our upcoming Global Week of Action, which is a student-created event that focuses on particular SDGs throughout the year. And they involve different keynote speakers and workshops, and are always a great opportunity to learn more about SDGs and connect with different student leaders and get more involved with the other mini programs. And we hope to see you there.
Thank you, Christine and Ayomide. And just before we leave, let's have a group picture. So could everyone have their cameras on? Please, if you'd be so kind to switch on your cameras, let's have a group picture. So Andrew, when you're ready.
Fantastic, thank you. Let's see some more brilliant faces here, if possible. The more the merrier, they're still coming on, so just a second. Wonderful, thank you all for sticking it out here and staying online with us today. There's some brilliant discussion to help protect and save our oceans. All right. And big smile on 1, 2, and 3. Excellent. Oh, Andy, I just got you in there for a second. Hold on, maybe come back. There he is. Okay, and 1, 2, and fantastic. Thank you all so much for spending time with us.